Hey everybody, today we're talking about healthy team culture. Do you have things in your organization or your team or your family culture that you know could be better, that you want to improve? Well, listen up, because today we're doing a part 2 of last month's episode on healthy team culture. And we're gonna give you some things you can do to put and keep your team on the pathway to health. That's what we're talking about today on the Grow Leader podcast. Now, before we get started, we want to say a huge thank you to the generous partners that help make the Grow Leader podcast happen every single month. The first is the Wesleyan Investment Foundation. For over 80 years, WIF has been helping churches and church planners with their borrowing and their investing needs. Maybe you're a pastor dreaming about how you're going to fund a new building project or other growth opportunity, or you might be at a place where you're trying to decide how to wisely invest the resources that you do have. We really think WIF can help you, and you can learn more about them at wifonline.com. We also want to say a huge thank you to Great American Family. Great American Family is America's premier TV destination for high quality family programming, including, and this matters this time of year, Great American Christmas. Great American Christmas is 24/7 Christmas movies. I mean, come on, my wife would get so excited hearing about that. 24/7 Christmas movies from now until the end of the year, including 18 original movie premieres, and those will premiere every Saturday and Sunday night at 8 p.m. Great American Family is part of the Great American Media portfolio of brands and is carried through all major cable providers. Text Christmas, that's right, Christmas, to 877-999-1225 to find out how you can watch Great American Family, or you can head over to greatamericanfamily.com. And finally, we want to say a big thank you to Compassion International. Compassion International has been working to serve the world's most vulnerable children in the name of Jesus for over 70 years. They've helped over 2.2 million children, and they reach and serve every child and family through the power of the local church. To learn more about Compassion International, visit them at compassion.com. Well, welcome everybody to the Grow Leader podcast, where we grow leaders that grow churches by helping them reach their full potential. I'm Matt Miner, and with me as always is Pastor Chris Hodges. PC, how you doing?
I'm doing great. You have to be doing amazing after finally moving into your new facility as the Grandview campus pastor.
It's been a wild process to watch that all come together, and we're all on cloud nine. Just unbelievable and excited about Pastor and all the people that are coming to church.
And I want everybody listening to come see this facility. If you've never been to the Grandview campus facility, and which is also the home of Highlands College, we really want to invite you. We'll give you a personal tour to come see this amazing place.
It's amazing. Can't wait for chapel coming up. Podcast today, chapel tomorrow, chapel Thursday, and so we'll have anywhere from 8 to 10 services a week in that building.
Isn't it awesome?
We're super excited about it.
Yep.
It's awesome. So I want to get into podcast content that we're excited about. And we're going to do a follow-up, actually the rest of the list of healthy team culture items from last month. Before that, though,
I'm very excited to talk about a season that's coming up that we have, of course, every year is the 21 days of prayer and fasting. But this one is a little bit more unique in a couple of ways. And one of those is, I think the nation and the world is ripe for revival. I don't think there's ever been a season that's needed prayer, or the prayer effect would be greater than the one we're currently in, which means pastors and leaders, I know you're already probably planning your January and your next year, and hopefully you're doing something around the thought of prayer and fasting. But I'm releasing a brand new book that I actually asked the publisher to make available on that date, January 8th, which for us, that'll be the first day of the 21 days of prayer, January 8th to the 28th. And the book is called Pray First, and it's everything that I have learned about prayer over almost 4 decades of ministry. Next year will be 40 years for me that I've been in ministry. Of course, grew up in a great prayer culture in my home church, Bethany World Prayer Center in Baton Rouge, and my pastor, who's the most praying pastor that I know in the world. He taught me many, many things, and I've been leading youth services and churches now for decades, and have always been marked by prayer and fasting, and not only prayer and fasting seasons, but prayer and fasting events, if you will, seasons where we gather everybody together and have, for us, it's prayer every single morning at 6 a.m. So there's several things I want to offer the pastors and leaders that are listening to me today, if you think your church would like to join us for the 21 days of prayer and fasting, I want to personally invite you to join us. We already have almost 2,000 churches that join us January 8th to the 28th. But if you're listening and you've never joined us in that effort, man, I don't think there's anything that's more important than for us to pray right now in this season that we're living in with our nation and our world. And I think it's ripe, again, for revival. But also with this book, I think this book is going to help churches and pastors because it does three things. The first section of the book talks a little bit about how to make prayer work, because here's my thesis, and that is people aren't praying because they don't think prayer is important. I think they do know it's important. And in fact, I think they're sufficiently inspired to pray.
Right.
I don't think they know what to say. And I don't think they know how to make prayer fun, if you will, engaging, powerful. So I have this entire section on what makes prayer work. And it's a great outline if you ever want to teach this stuff in your church for you pastors and leaders. The second section are prayer models. So one of the secrets that I've learned as a youth pastor and now for 21 years as a senior pastor is that there are models in the Bible that we can follow. The Lord's Prayer, the prayer of Jabez, the tabernacle prayer. I actually have 6 different models of how to pray, and I teach through these models. Fantastic. I'm seriously, if there's ever been a tool that I've learned to motivate and to generate a praying culture in our churches, it's been this. So I always say the real meat of the book is this middle section on the different models of prayer in Scripture. So I'm excited for people to get this book for that reason. And then finally, the last section is how to make prayer work in your church. So I talk about prayer and fasting, how to raise up personal intercessors, how to train personal intercessors, how to build a prayer culture in our churches. And so for that reason, I really would love for many of you that resonates with. If you'd like to see a prayer movement take place in your church, or you'd like to join us with this effort of praying and fasting to start 2023, then you can get these books. They're at the lowest rate. I told the publisher, I don't want to make anything, put it as low as you can because I want churches to have it. And in our show notes, we'll make sure you have the website of where these bulk orders can happen. But here's the one thing you need to understand, and that is if you don't do it now, this is November, if you don't order them now, they won't be available in January. It is going to sell out. They don't really warehouse that many. They try to project the sales, and in my opinion, they kind of usually do it on the lower side and get it wrong, and so then you end up in these back order situations. But when January rolls around, you can either give these away in your church or you can sell them, honestly, at any rate you want to. I don't care what you do with it. I just want to get this message into the hands of people. Then I'm doing 2 more things, Matt, that I want our leaders and pastors to hear.
Yeah.
And that is that I'm going to be preaching a message series in January called Pray First. And I'm making all 4 of those message outlines available to any pastor who wants them for free.
That's great.
You can just have them. So if you want to preach any or all of them, you'll have my notes in advance. So I'm going to actually prepare these messages now. So by December, all 4 of these messages will already be available for pastors to teach it themselves. And then I'm going to pre-record one of the ones that I'm going to do live when it is January for any church that would like to use it. If you're a pastor and you want a Sunday off, or you just want me to speak one of your Sunday services, this is an opportunity for churches to get this material. All that said is I'm very passionate about this message of prayer, and arguably it's been one of my life messages and all of the ministries that I've been fortunate to steward that God's given me by the grace of God. They've all been marked by prayer.
And this is not new in how you led our staff. We hear about this all the time, but I think making those resources available to pastors and leaders, so helpful. I would even say this, if you're listening, you want to hear Pastor Chris teach on prayer, you can actually go back to last January. Our January episode was on prayer, but I'm excited about the book. I think it's going to help so many people, and everybody thinks prayer is hard.
It's not. And it's all in the title, Pray First. So if you'll make it your first response, not your last resort, it changes everything.
So great. Going to dig into the content now. I'm so excited to finish up this list, and we planned on doing all 12 of these in last month's episode, and we just got real conversational about it, enjoyed working through them. I had pastors DMing me, reaching out and saying, bro, you're killing us. Where's the rest of it? We need the rest of the list. You're getting the rest of the list right now. So we're going to jump in just a second. A particular favorite from last month that I love is that we're a family. We're not employees. And just love that. I think that one thing alone helps your staff culture, your team culture, when you love one another. Let's dig in. I know you're ready to go.
I am.
Get into the rest of the list. The final 6 of healthy team culture. Let's go.
And by the way, if you are enjoying this podcast, let us know. I mean, give us some feedback of how we can improve. And of course, if you like it, we'd like for you to like it on all your platforms and also share it with your friends. But here's the next 6, and I love the 7th. So we gave you the first 6 in the October episode. Number 7 is that we are unapologetically all about the numbers. And I know that offends some people who say, man, you're all about the numbers. Y'all just count everything. But we would argue you always count what matters. I tell pastors when I'm teaching this that I don't have somewhere between 3 and 7 kids. I have 5. I know their names. Every one of them are important to me because you always count what matters. I think what people are turned off by, Matt, is whenever we boast those numbers and we kind of make them an ego-driven type of thing. It's not that, but all throughout the scripture, the Bible records. I mean, you think about the day of Pentecost. It named the literal number of people who gave their lives to Jesus because every number is a person, and every person matters to God. But here's the value that I think is important as we're teaching it to our staff, and that is I think the team does their job better when they know the scoreboard. Yeah. And they know the expectations. And you're a campus pastor, you understand that we know what we're measuring. So we know what our dashboards are. And so we have several of them. I mean, really, I think there's 10 in all that we're navigating all of the time. And you do it with your car, and no one has a problem with it. You know how much gas you have, you know how fast you're going, you know what your oil pressure is. And if you're not in the habit of having some dashboards, you know, then you, in my opinion, you can't fulfill the mandate of shepherds to their flocks to know well the condition of your flocks. And the numbers aren't what we celebrate. The numbers are indicators of health, and what we really want is health. And I like to remind people that are thinking it through the numbers is that growing is important. You know, we call this the Grow Leader podcast because growth is essential as long as heaven and hell are realities, and they are. So we continue to push toward doing more for God because every number is a person.
And we use this to help see trends throughout the year. I mean, you can look at salvations in a given year and say, wow, there's a lot of, you know, non-Christians coming to church during this time of the year, so therefore let's do an evangelical service. We use it for everything, just to evaluate and know where we're headed. It's a great way for your staff not to get disappointed because, hey, don't worry about attendance. It always rolls off this time of the year. It helps in so many ways.
And one of the I think it was kind of an unintended, beautiful consequence that came out of this is it created a culture that I want everybody to hear this very carefully, that you would agree that is in all of our campus pastors and all of our department heads, and that has made every staff member more interested in winning the game than the position they play, which is a value. Honestly, we could make this a value all by itself, that we are, all of us, myself included, or more interested in the corporate effort, what we do together, than receiving the personal accolades. In other words, we would rather wear the team ring than to have the individual championship or trophy. And I think that's an important value because it goes against the silos that can inevitably happen in every organization. And we all know what we're trying to accomplish. And for us, it's very simple. We want people to know God, find freedom, discover purpose, make a difference. And we measure that by the people getting saved, people that are in groups, people that are discovering their purpose, and people that are doing what we think is the ultimate hope of the world, and that is that they're doing something with their lives that is making a difference on a team. So those are our measurables, and we are unapologetically all about the numbers.
It helps so much. I feel like we're surrounded by a group of people on our team who are like, hey, well, you just put me in the place where I can have the biggest impact in what we're doing. Like everybody wants to move to have the greatest impact they can. It really, really helps team culture.
Exactly. All right, here's number 8. And that is, this one's very important, and honestly, I'm working on a set of messages on this 8th value for the places where I'm now speaking in leadership settings or conferences, and that is we take care of ourselves and those who are closest to us. And I think coming out of the pandemic for the past couple of years, unfortunately, there are a lot of pastors and leaders that simply aren't healthy, and they probably were all along. And the pandemic season did not create it, it exposed it or revealed it. But I think it's important for us to go into a season now and make sure we're talking about soul care, body care. I mean, like, are you resting well? Or do you Sabbath well? And of course, we've done podcasts on this. We did one over the summer about just taking the appropriate time off and what do you do during that time. But also things like your marriage, your spirit. Are you still praying in the morning? Are you still getting up and spending time with God? That if you don't have something, you can't give something. You know, the Peter and John, Acts chapter 3, such as I have. Right. Give I thee. I can only give what I have. And for some of us, and you need to hear this really as almost a prophetic warning. Maybe you're a dad or mom, a pastor or a leader, but more is going out than is coming in. That well will run dry, and it can become fatal or dangerous in those situations. So really, part of your leadership culture has to be, hey, we take care of ourselves and the people that are closest to us.
I think it's so easy to overcomplicate this. And the thing that you've been telling us as a staff is like, we have to just get to the basics of simply following Jesus. If you're just, you tell us all the time, the most important thing you can do for me is fall more in love with Jesus. Like just fall in love with Jesus. And so much of that health piece for ourselves and those around us just trickles out of that relationship.
Well, I know for me, I call it mastering my mornings. And I think, it's not all's well that ends well, it's all's well that begins well. And that first hour, for me, it's a little bit more than that I just set aside to be alone, to study, to pray, to worship, to read, is fuel to the tank that makes everything that I do possible. And I think any time that I would stop that, everyone would quickly notice. Let me give, for the sake of time, go ahead and jump to number 9, and that is the value of we are. Notice all these, by the way, start with we, because these are team values. We are in the people business. And this is the value of hospitality. So recently I was reading a leadership journal, and it spoke so much to me. And it was a secular journal, Matt, but they made this statement, and it just resonated with me, that hospitality is the single most important business strategy. And they went on to say, they said, and again, just put this in the context of the secular, not the spiritual. It's our job, of course, as leaders in the church world to interpret it into our world. But let me read it in the secular context so maybe it'll resonate with you like it did me. And they said, you're not selling your product, you're selling happiness and emotional comfort. And they said, if you think I'm on your side, hospitality is present. If you think I did something for you, hospitality is present. If you think I'm customizing the experience for you, hospitality is present. So the way you make people feel is what they remember. And I love this statement because I just thought it was the coolest little statement. You don't have to be the best. You just have to be their favorite.
That's great.
And so the question is, how do you become their favorite? You provide an emotion that makes them feel awesome. Now, that was in the secular world, and we're not in the business of selling a product or necessarily making people feel awesome. But the point is, hospitality still is important, how we treat people, the experience they have when they come to our campuses, the experience they have when they check their kids into the nursery or children's church. All that is extremely, extremely important. You say, okay, well then how do you create a culture around this? And so there's another layer to this that I can't wait to tell you. I'm so excited because it's really good leadership content. And I hope you're writing this down, or if you're working out or in a car or something, get it in the show notes. We'll make sure you have it. They said the best way to make the customer happy is to make sure that the people who come to work are happy.
Say that one more time.
So the best way to make the customer happy is the person that's serving them. Make sure the people who serve them, the people who come to work, they're happy. In other words, people are experiencing hospitality based on the person that's showing them
that's so great.
That hospitality. And what they recommended, and I fully agree with this statement, then you hire people 49% for their technical skills or their technical competence, and 51% for their emotional competence or their emotional skills, because they want to enjoy the person. Now, I remember reading this. I think we taught this in one of our podcasts, right, when you study the Ritz-Carlton Way, the Horst Schultz book. He was saying that the most important ingredient to hospitality, of course, they were in the hotel business, was the person that they would encounter, the people. And I would just love to say to every staff that's listening to this, it's so important that we find that inner joy, that inner peace. I mean, how can we minister something to someone if we're the ones that actually need it ourselves?
Yeah.
But when we have something to give away, it comes back to that. One of the phrases that John Maxwell says often to people that he's trying to reach, I think it's so beautiful. He'll just say to them right in the middle of a crisis or a marriage issue or worried about something, and he'll look at them and say, I just wish you had my peace. Mm-hmm. I wish you had my joy. And I think just when you experience another person who obviously has something going on the inside of them, that when you met them, you walked away from it and you thought, wow, that was a breath of fresh air. I just met somebody who I think is for me, who has the joy of God on the inside, that is absolutely one of the most important growth qualities a church or an organization should have. And that's why we have it as a cultural value, that really we're ministers. We minister the gospel of Jesus, but we're in the people business. And I think about Jesus. I mean, he had kids jumping on him. And he just can't be the way Hollywood portrays him, which is malnourished, a little sad, a little gaunt, a little too serious. No. You can't be that way to have. If they had to pull the kids off of Jesus, he had to have been enjoyable. He had to have been, can I say it, fun. And I think people are drawn to that life in a place where there's just so much that is drying them up.
Can you talk about this from a leadership principle? Because I've seen you do this, if we're having an all-staff meeting or if you're walking through the halls of Highlands College, no doubt you have a list of things you're thinking about, but you're aware as a leader that just a high five or a hey guys, how's it going? Or, just going over and talking to students. I feel like so often we can get so focused on the thing we're doing that we forget just to go and interact with the people we're doing it with. And it matters. It makes a huge difference.
Exactly. And I call it lighting up the room. So when I find somebody on my team that just owns the environment and brightens up the room, I have learned in nearly 4 decades of ministry that you can get a lot done with that person. So I would rather teach them a technical skill, because I can't hardly teach that. I can't teach them to be that enjoyable to be around. So I've hired a lot of people over the years who really didn't have the technical competence that they needed. Well, the first time I met you came to our organization to be in the video editing world. You had that technical ability, but I quickly saw, man, bro, you're fun to be with. You were making everybody laugh all of the time, and that's why I said, I can get somebody else to edit a video. I need you on a stage. And you built a great campus, and you really, truly are one of our best leaders, and you're the one that kind of carries the banner of our culture to our staff. And so that's what I'm talking about. And in this, I want to end with one more thing. Again, you're going to want to write this down, because this is another layer to this hospitality journal that I read years ago, that they had 7 skills that they were looking for that makes a person a hospitality type person. And one of those, and I just think this is a huge word, is the word kindness. You're just kind. They were always optimistic. They had a great work ethic. They had what they called curious intelligence, and I just love that. Curious intelligence is, I don't know how to do that, and I'm going to go find out. I love, love, love people like that. I love staff who say, this is not even my area, but I want to go learn. I want to go see how that works. I love curious intelligence. Then the next one is empathy. Just I can feel what people feel. Self-awareness, that's how I make people feel. Do I even know how I make people feel? Matt, by the way, we need to do an entire episode on emotional intelligence. I'm just thinking that right now, because it's probably been one of the best teachings we've taught our staff over the years is, are we even aware of how we're projecting ourselves onto other people? And then the last of the 7 skills: kindness, optimism, work ethic, curious intelligence, empathy, self-awareness, and the last one is integrity. And those combine, these 7 skills creates this emotional capacity, so that the person serving the people, so the person giving the hospitality, give people this sense of, I'm so glad I came, which I think ultimately, and this is the goal, causes them to open up their hearts to God.
So the next one really ties into number 9, and you talked about Jesus. He was fun, and we don't think about Jesus as fun very often, but jump into this and explain how that plays out here at Highlands.
Yeah, so the 10th one does, you're right, just kind of dovetail to the 9th, and the 10th value that we have on our team is that we're serious about having fun.
Serious about it.
Oh, we're serious. It's just kind of fun to say it that way. What I mean by serious is you're intentional.
Right.
So I think we are fun people, but we're not spontaneously fun. We're looking for ways. When you do this presentation that you do every month, and some of you who are listening, you ought to come to one of our all staffs. Last Thursday of every month normally, where we spend an hour and a half with our team. Matt starts it off with this comedy spiel that he does. Everybody's rolling, and then we honor people who have held onto our values, and we actually give them gift cards and really reward what gets rewarded gets done.
That's right.
So we reward them and bless them with this gift from the church, but we're intentional about it. And the reason is, let me get serious about how serious we are for a minute, and that is because there is a spirit of heaviness.
Yeah.
I mean, my goodness, when you think about the condition that people are coming into our services, the condition they're coming in, I'm reminded of the priest in the Old Testament. Josephus actually gives extra biblical detail to how the priest wore this garment, and on the hem of that garment, it was called the garment of praise. Every priest had to wear this garment of praise, and the Bible says there were bells at the bottom of this robe. Josephus actually mentions the number that there were 72, so he was jingling all the way, just like it's like a Santa Claus looking robe, but it was blue instead of red. And the Bible says that the minister should wear it coming into minister, and that the sound of the bells should be heard as he's leaving the ministry, as he's walking off the stage, so to speak. And this is all found in Exodus chapter 28. And the point of it is that the minister is responsible for joy. The minister is responsible for laughter. The minister is responsible for this smile on people's faces. This priest was literally jingling all the way. And I always tell pastors, you want a church growth strategy? Here it is. Serve the Lord with gladness.
Yeah.
And have some fun. Bring some joy. Light up the room. And so we do hold our staff and all of our employees really to the standard of, hi, be friendly, be encouraging, give shout outs, celebrate things, laugh. We want food. We want stories. We want anything that brightens up the room, because there is a spirit of heaviness.
And we really do look at it as family. I think when you think about hanging out with your family, there are nicknames. We have nicknames on our staff. There are inside jokes. And Sunday's not the time for inside jokes. You've got guests in the house. But when you have your family, your team, whatever team you're leading together, it's a great time to have fun with one another and joke. And we're serious about the joking. We're serious about the fun. And it does help the health of the staff so much.
And one of the things that we can offer you, especially for those of you who are involved in Grow Leader, is come experience it yourself. We invite you to come spend a weekend with us. Maybe take a Sunday off if you're a preacher, and just come experience the culture of the house, and come to one of our all staffs on a Thursday. Just come experience. You'll see the laughter. You'll see the joy. You'll see the culture. And I think it's really, truly one of the most important values. All right, you ready for number 11?
Let's go.
So here are the last two, and this one's huge. And again, we have and we need to continue to develop entire podcasts on this value that we invest God's resources with integrity, frugality, and generosity. And each one of those words is important when you talk about resources. So let me say it this way. You can't have a healthy culture and get anything related to money wrong.
Wow.
So you can get the other 11 values perfectly right. And if you mishandle money, there's a spirit on money. There really is. And Jesus talked about the spirit of mammon versus the spirit of generosity, right? And there's a spirit on money. And that's why, the New Testament says that the love of money is the root of all evil.
Right.
Because there's a spirit on it. So you have to be very, very intentional. And it's not something that just the board decides or the financial office decides. This is a team value. Why? Because we all have an area of stewardship of the finances ourselves. So no, let me say it this way. There's a light switch in all of our offices. Did we leave it on or did we turn it off? We're all touching some part of the finances of this church. And honestly, as a team members, we all need to model generosity.
Right.
I mean, how can we expect the people of our church to be generous if we're not generous? And it's one of the conversations we have with our team is all three of these words of integrity. So that we're taking great pains to do what is right in both the sight of God and in the eyes of men. That's 2 Corinthians chapter 8. But also we're doing it with frugality. Is there a way that we could save money? And this is a particularly important value and challenge to a church like ours. And I hope you take this the right way. I don't mean to say it sounding at all, too prideful, because I'm just trying to tell you, we have the money. And so it could easily say, well, we don't need to be careful of how many, plates of food that we ordered that nobody ate because we had the money. Well, no, yes, we do.
Yep.
We still are going to steward it as if we had no money. And that's what frugality means, that we're going to still be intentional about what we have, even if we have extra to have just, we can just write that off. Well, no, we can't really, because God is watching. And so not only just integrity and frugality, but also generosity, which I think is the opposite side of that coin. So it's kind of like we're tight, but we're also generous, like give.
And you did such a good job with this from the stage. Can you give some practical examples? I'm thinking about, how we bless Dream Teamers, but also how we speak to members of the church. You're pushing generosity, this ownership, that they're a part of all of this all the time from the stage.
Yeah, because I'm trying to make people in our church feel like owners.
Right.
These are your drums. That piece of paper in that parking lot was your piece of paper. Like, we all own this, and so let's all steward it well, and let's all be generous with it well. And so we openly tell them, hey, we're being very careful with our finances so that we can be very generous to others. And we're running out of time, but I have to give them this last value.
Maybe the most important one.
Yeah, and it kind of comes back to what I started the episode off with today. And I want to just say again, I'm just so passionate about really doing everything I can to spark a prayer movement in our country, because I think there's never been a revival or an awakening that did not begin with united prayer of not just one church, but every church. And so here's the 12th value, and I love the way it's worded, and it's worded very intentionally. And that is, we realize that God's presence is greater than our efforts. So after doing something for as long as I've done it, you can have this thought, and it's just not true. I'm pretty good at this. I can go out here and speak, and God doesn't have to show up. And you never say it that way.
Right.
But at any time I go out there with a well-planned sermon and a well-planned service and did not ask God, I can't go out there unless you go with me, then you're relying on your own efforts. And we remind our team forever and continually. In fact, one of the things that I say at the beginning of every Sunday morning, and you're not there in my pre-service meeting because you're at your own campus, but I say this to the Grants Mill team, and I say, hey, before we pray, does anybody need God's help today? And they all go, oh, yeah. And it reminds us we're some of the best at what we do. Okay, let me just say it. We think we do what we do well. It's still not enough.
Right.
My message, it wasn't enough. That video wasn't enough. Those songs, I don't care how many times you rehearse them, unless God shows up, it's never enough. So we will never take it for granted, but we will continually seek God's presence over our own efforts.
So great. That's the best one to land on, and such a great reminder. Maybe at your service this week, you pray differently before you go into your service on Sunday or before you go into a meeting this week. Thank you so much, PC. Super excited about the prayer resources, your book coming out. And again, we'll have all of the information about that in the show notes, so you can go there and see how you can get the book, and also how you can be a part of 21 days of prayer and fasting in January. And give us feedback. If you like what you're hearing, if we're helping you, if there's something you want to hear about, go to Instagram @GrowLeaders. Send us a direct message. We do read those, and we will look at them. And we'll see you next month on the Grow Leader Podcast.
If you're here, we know you're already on your way to being an incredible leader. That's why we want to invite you to attend the Impact Leadership Conference on December 7th. Expect to learn from and be challenged by experts. Dr. John Maxwell, Pastor Chris Hodges, and New York Times bestselling author and brilliant entrepreneur, Jamie Kern-Lima. Hosted by Highlands College, this free virtual event is provided as an investment in leaders everywhere. Register today at impactleader.com to elevate your impact.